Hello and welcome to lecture 20, where I'll be showing you how to set up photorealistic cloth shaders. And I will be showing you two different kinds of cloth. One is more like a towel, which is dry and has a little bit of sheen. And the other one will be more like a satin cloth, very high polished cloth. So I want to show you the kind of like this material here, and on the satin cloth, something like this, which is more shiny and has some color reflections on it. So before we start, I want to explain what cloth is. So cloth is actually strings of fiber weaved together into a pattern. So it is very important to, if you want to mimic proper cloth, to use a correct normal map. So, and you can get any interesting normal maps from the internet, textures XYZ, or just Google it and find something interesting. And you can see that the ones here has these woven texture, which is very interesting. Some packages like Maya or Cinema 4D allow you to actually create a bomb texture which has these weaves directly in the software. But if you don't have that, use a normal map, buy one or download one or whatever, and use that instead. So let's head over to the Hypershade where I have a shader set up. It's a default gray shader. And on the left, you can see we have kind of a cloth geometry. And the first thing what I want to do now is connect a cloth normal map. So I'm heading over to a node creation and create the AI image node. So on the attribute editor, I'm browsing for my normal map, which is found here. I'll load that in, and let's just connect this to a AI normal map shader, and connect the color to the input, and connect the out value of that node to the normal camera slot from the cloth shader. And you can immediately see that there's something happening on the surface. And if I just isolate the selection here and render from the AI image node, you can see there's some pattern going on. For this geometry, I think it's too small, the detail. So let's just change the scale for this certain geometry to maybe 0.2. And you can see we get a texture right now. It might be too big, but let's see how it looks rendered. And yes, it's definitely a bit too big. So maybe go up to 0.25 in both U and V. And this could kind of work for a towel. It might be a bit too large still, but I think we can work with this. So from the get-go, this already looks very interesting. You can play around with the height by adjusting the normal strength. You can see on 0 it's off, on 0.5 it's half the intensity, and I think this should work pretty good. So let's just go to the cloth shader and change the base color. So I showed you the blue towel, so let's go with a kind of a blue color. Go here and maybe less purple, more blue, add some more value to this, a bit more saturation maybe. And this could actually work already for a basic cloth shader. It still feels a bit like plastic, so we can play around with the roughness some more. The 5.5 seems to work pretty well, so you can see what happens if I go lower. It looks very shiny and it looks almost like a glittery cloth now, but so this will not work for our case. So let's go back up to maybe 0.4. And I still think this is too much, so let's maybe go even higher and try 0.6. So this is now a really rough cloth, which is something you would expect from a towel, right? So let's head over to the sheen attribute in the standard surface shader, and let's just amp up the weight to 1 and see what we get. And you can already see what is happening. On the edges of the cloth, you can see you get these white highlights. For this effect, it's a bit too strong. So let's do something a bit more interesting. And for now, just color pick the same color we used before for the cloth, for the base. And now we shouldn't see any difference at all. So what we can do now is slowly introduce some more like a whiter color. Because it's a sheen, it should be a bit brighter than the base color. So let's desaturate it a bit and maybe bring up the value also a tiny bit. And now you should be able to see that on the edges of the cloth it gets a lot wider, which gives us like a smoother impression, and this feels actually like you can touch it. And if you have a shader where you can actually, by looking at it, imagine how it feels, then you know you have done a good job. And I think this feels like a kind of a soft towel or like a drape or something. I think this could definitely work. So this would be the first cloth shader I wanted to show you. And so now let's try to create something more interesting, something like a satin. Let's actually try to go with this green, and you can see that the specular color is actually also tinted green, so keep that in mind. So let's just disconnect, what should we do? Let's just change the color for my base to this green. I'm just color picking off screen to a green color, like that. And also let's play around with the normal map and make this a lot smaller than it was before. So currently it's scaled to 0.25. Let's go maybe try 2. So this should give us a really soft normal map on everything. A really soft bumpiness to it. It might register as noise, which is fine. And because you can see now in this close-up, you can actually see some fibers going on here, which is very interesting. So I think we should do a bit darker base color, and let's for now disable the sheen and make the base color darker. And now comes the interesting part. We will bring in some specular color. So you could either do a tinted color, which maybe makes more sense, but you could also play around with the metalness, which would be a funky idea because a cloth is not a metal, it's a dielectric. So I can just show you what this would look like if you maybe blend a metalness to this a bit, and this should automatically tint the specular to a green sheen. And you can see it looks pretty cool. If I play down the roughness a bit, you can see now we get something kind of like what this would look like, right? It's pretty close already. But instead of using metalness, just revert this back because the algorithm is a bit different for dielectrics. Let's just use a specular color of a bit more saturated green and play down the roughness some more. So what we get now is a bit more interesting. I think we should play up the IOR maybe to 1.65, and this already gives us something very cool looking. And you can play around with the bump. So let's just bring this up to 1 maybe, and also introduce a bit more AA samples to get a smoother render. So from the get-go now, this looks very nice. You can see you get these stretches, you can see something really shiny on the top. But now let's also introduce the sheen. So instead of using the blue, which we have had before, let's try something really kind of like a yellow color. Let's head over to color and choose first the same, and then just hue shift it to a bit more, well, let's actually go a bit more green. Maybe desaturate it a bit. And this definitely looks like a pretty nice satin cloth now. It could be a bit more metallic, so we can actually play up the IOR a bit more, maybe 2. And now you can actually see on the top here, it's getting a lot more shiny and it has very nice detail to this. So let's just render this and see what it looks like. So on the left, you can see now the render with the green satin shader. It has a normal map connected, it has some sheen to it, it has some specular color, and it has a typical base color. So this would be I would say an average good looking shader. Let's try something more like this, which is, it seems like it's a bit more shiny, it has more structure to it, and you can see even the pink one here is very shiny. So let's try to replicate that. Alright, so heading over to the cloth, let's just change the base color, or let's just first actually reset all the other colors, no sheen, and this goes back to 1.5. Let's just almost disable the bump map. So we just maybe have a weight of 0.1. So very shiny now. We can actually go a bit higher, 0.2. And we can see now there's a nice breakup or a nice texture on it. It's still a bit too shiny. So let's maybe go back up to 3.5. And I think this works pretty good. We can see that it's very shiny and good looking. So let's head over to the cloth shader, and I will be picking the pink color off screen. All right, so this is now the picked purple color. I think it's a bit too light. So let's just reduce the color a bit. So this could definitely work. And now instead of playing around with the specular color, let's just make it a bit more metallic. So let's go maybe up to 0.35 on the metallic slider. And now you can already see that we get some purple or pink looking specula, which is very interesting. And this is something we want to work with. And you can see how it looks already pretty close. I think the dress in the reference is a bit more on the pinker side. Something like this. And we can also try now to bring back some sheen. So let's just, instead of use a green, let's just go to maybe a bit of a red sheen, like a purplish red, and introduce the weight back to 1. And let's just reduce the intensity a bit. And let's just render and see what we get. So by just looking at it, you can see, or you can imagine how it feels. It will slip through your hands because it's very soft and very slippery. So this is exactly what you want to create. So we have connected a bump using this cloth texture. It's really soft. It goes into the normal camera. Then we have a base color of this darker purple. We have metalness to 0.35, and we have a sheen applied on top. So on the edges, we get a bit more pinkish color. And I think this very well represents like this purple dress on the right. So thank you guys for watching this lecture, and I hope you understand satin or cloth shaders a bit better now. So I see you in the next lecture. Thank you.